Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in as we kick off another week. Boy, he just doesn't get it, does he? I'm talking about, of course, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. Over the weekend, he decried the immigration crackdown in his city as an invasion by the federal government and complained about the possibility of local cops clashing with feds. Hey, Mr. Mayor, I have an idea. Instruct your city police officers to cooperate with federal agents who came to help them. There won't be a problem. Also, Representative Ilhan Omar likened the U.S. government's conduct on immigration enforcement to that of countries like Somalia, the country she left, saying in impassioned remarks that she never thought she had experienced such conduct in the GD United States. She's lucky God didn't strike her dead right there. And the South Carolina General Assembly is back in session. There are many important issues waiting for their action. Closing the primaries appears to be one of the most contentious competing bills in the South Carolina House. It's getting a lot of early attention. South Carolina Representative Mike Burns joins us to talk about that bill and the competing bill and just give us an overall update of the South Carolina House. Also, speaking of the General Assembly, South Carolina Senate's off to a fast start as well. Getting tougher on DUI penalties in the Palmetto State. President of the Senate, Thomas Alexander, joins us for an overview of what to expect in this year's legislative session. It's a busy day. Let's get started.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
So what we're seeing continue to unfold in Minneapolis, as this is going on 3 weeks now since the young lady lost her life trying to impede a group of ICE agents. This is a perfect snapshot of where the national immigration debate has landed because of that, and how disconnected local political rhetoric can be from federal law and reality. Over the weekend, we heard from Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey again. He went on CNN State of the Union and used some pretty strong language to describe what's happening in his city. He called the federal immigration enforcement surge an invasion. A sitting mayor of a major American city saying he never thought in a million years that his city would be invaded by the United States government. Now, that's not coming from an activist out on the street. That's coming from the mayor. Let's listen in.
The 600 police officers that we have are charged on any given day with investigating crime, stopping homicides from taking place, preventing carjackings. That's the work of a police officer in a city. Meanwhile, we have ICE agents throughout our city and throughout our state who, along with Border Control, are creating chaos. This is not the path that we should be on right now in America. Thankfully, there's another path. And I want to talk to everybody who's out there, even people who aren't living in Minneapolis right now. Maybe you just put your kids to bed. Maybe you're cleaning up the dishes. I'm sure you love your family. There's no doubt in my mind that you love your town. Imagine if that city or that town was suddenly invaded by thousands of federal agents that do not share the values that you hold dear. Imagine if your daily routines were disrupted. The local cafe that you eat at was shut down because they're scared that their own family might get torn apart. Imagine if schools shut down and suddenly parents got to figure out what to do for daycare. This is not creating safety. It's certainly not creating safety when a huge percentage of the shootings that have taken place so far this year in Minneapolis have been by ICE. So let's be very clear. I've seen conduct from ICE that is disgusting and is intolerable. If it were your city, it would be unacceptable there too. And for anyone that is taking the bait tonight, stop. That is not helpful. Go home.
Yeah, and just like that, I'm sure he thinks that Donald Trump's going to pull ICE out of Minneapolis. The mayor insists he doesn't want chaos. He says he's encouraging protesters to stay peaceful. You know, I got another idea, Mr. Mayor. Why don't you just ask protesters to go home? Why don't you ask them to go home rather than the ICE agents and the federal, the FBI and the other agents, and soon to be potentially federal troops? Now, on the surface, the mayor's trying to sound responsible. He adds that residents are asking local police to fight ICE agents on the street, and he says, that's unacceptable. Well, he's right. It's not. But we cannot have local cops physically clashing with federal law enforcement, and that needs to be clear up front. There doesn't need to be any question. There doesn't need to be any tension. The Trump administration didn't just wake up one morning and decide to flood Minnesota with federal agents just for fun. This started after this massive welfare and fraud scandal in the state, one that federal investigators say could reach into the billions of dollars. I haven't heard the mayor address that at all. Is the mayor concerned about the fraud? Does he have his local police investigating that fraud? So in response to this, roughly 3,000 ICE and Border Patrol agents have deployed across Minnesota. Minneapolis itself has about 600 local police officers. Put that in perspective. On top of that, reports indicate up to 1,500 military personnel are on standby right now, not for street patrol, but for logistics and support if unrest spirals. Now, that matters because the picture being painted, tanks rolling through neighborhoods, soldiers kicking in doors, that's not what's going to happen here. This is federal law enforcement enforcing federal law. Now, to use the word invasion, words do matter. Calling this an invasion does two things. First, it frames ICE agents as an occupying force rather than law enforcement officers. Second, it signals to protesters that resistance is justified. It's okay because we're being invaded, so let's protect ourselves. Let's defend our city. When the mayor of the city uses that language, it carries weight. Now, Mayor Frey says he supports peaceful protest and the right to record ICE operations. That's already protected by law. No one's disputing that. But here's the line that keeps getting blurred. Recording law enforcement is legal. Impeding law enforcement is not legal. When you try to interfere, you are breaking the law. Blocking vehicles, surrounding agents, refusing lawful orders, that's not protest. That's obstruction. And we've seen exactly what plays out in Minneapolis when that happens repeatedly over these past couple of weeks. Here's where things get more revealing. Border Czar Tom Homan has said the administration would consider scaling back the federal surge if local officials cooperate. Specifically, if they allow ICE access to jails to pick up individuals who are already in custody. They don't have to go out into the neighborhoods to find them. That's not a raid. It's not a street sweep. It's a handoff. It's cooperation the way that law enforcement should cooperate. Mayor Frey was asked about that. He sidestepped it. Instead, he said Holman doesn't understand how Minnesota works and insisted this isn't about crime or safety. Here's the reality. If ICE is blocked from jails, they go to the streets, to the neighborhoods to find the people they're looking for. That's not ideology. That's logistics. That's doing your job. If local officials won't cooperate at secure facilities, federal agents have no choice but to conduct enforcement in public spaces. That's when tensions rise. That's when mistakes happen. That's when people get killed. That's when protesters show up and get hurt. And so when Mayor Frey says this isn't about safety, the obvious follow-up is, then why not reduce the risk by cooperating, having your police officer, having your detention centers let the federal agents know when they have someone in their jails who the federal government is looking for. Minnesota, Illinois are now suing the Trump administration to push federal personnel out of their states, 2 states. I'm sure others will follow. At the same time, Department of Justice is reportedly probing whether Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz coordinated efforts to obstruct federal immigration enforcement. We'll see where that investigation goes as well. Things are just crazy, folks. We got to all get on the same page. It's not your fault that losing weight is getting harder and harder. You're eating better, you're moving more, but your body isn't responding the way it used to. That's not willpower, that's metabolism. And believe me, I've learned so much about the metabolism from the folks at PhD Weight Loss, and it's made a huge difference in my life. Joey Hudson here. For many people, years of dieting quietly slows the metabolic system down, so the harder you try, the less progress you see. At PhD Weight Loss, they help people identify what's actually blocking fat loss, and they fix the root cause, not just count calories. If you want to understand why your body isn't cooperating, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Fix My Weight Loss to unlock the New Year's special. It's free, it's personalized, and it could explain everything. Call 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss. That's 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss to get started today. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Start the new year off right and fix your weight loss. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is under fire again. I'm not sure she's come out from under fire for quite some time now. Her latest comments she made at a Democrat field hearing in St. Paul, where she compared U.S. immigration enforcement under President Donald Trump to conditions in countries like Somalia, the country she fled as a child. And she didn't exactly mince words. She told the crowd she never thought she had experienced this kind of government conduct in the GD United States. Here's her own words.
The one place where we thought we would never experience this is the U.S. States.
Wow. Just wow. I mean, and she went on to say how ashamed she is of America, that supposedly, according to her, we're broadcasting this to the rest of the world. Now, that alone tells you this wasn't a policy critique. It wasn't emotional, moral indictment necessarily. I mean, let's start with the context, because that matters. As we've been talking about in today's show, Minnesota's become ground zero for a major federal immigration fraud crackdown. After this massive welfare fraud scandal, then we send in federal forces, ICE agents, to try to round these criminals up. And Ilhan Omar is just upset about the whole thing. I mean, that deployment has escalated tensions, and she has done nothing to discourage this. The shooting of Renee Nicole Good during an ICE operation has now become a symbol, just like George Floyd did. It's a rallying point for opponents of ICE enforcement in Minnesota. Representative Omar is squarely in that camp. Now, here's where things really ignited. Omar said that people who escaped countries like Somalia believed the U.S. would be the one place they'd never experienced this kind of government behavior. And now she says they are. That comparison set off alarms across the political spectrum. Senator Mike Lee said no member of Congress should ever refer to the United States in those terms. Elon Musk went even further, responding online with rhetoric that quickly escalated into talk of treason, which only added more fuel to the fire. Now, let's be clear. You can strongly disagree with Omar's comments, and many Americans have and do, without jumping to extreme conclusions or overheated accusations, though. But it's also fair to say this comparison struck a nerve for a real reason. Somalia is a country defined by civil war, failed governance, militias, warlords, kidnappings, lawlessness. If Omar is so disgusted with the United States, go home, go back, resign from Congress, and get out of our country. It's just that simple. I think she should be deported anyway. The United States whatever your view on immigration policy is not any of those things. It's nothing like Somalia. ICE agents operate under U.S. law. They're subject to courts. They're investigated when force is used. They are constrained by warrants, procedures, and oversight. To equate immigration enforcement with the kind of chaos people fled in failed states isn't just emotional. It collapses important distinctions. It confuses the issue. And when the language comes from a sitting member of the U.S. House of Representatives, it doesn't just reflect frustration. It kind of shapes public perception because it's coming from this official person. I mean, what are the Somalians thinking out in Minneapolis? They're thinking, gosh, we're being persecuted here. We're being crucified. They're not being fair to us because our own representative is saying that. She didn't stop there, though. Ms. Omar accused Republicans of being okay with what she described as an occupation of Minneapolis and St. Paul. She alleged that Americans are being detained, that checkpoints are being set up, and that people are being asked for their papers, quote. Those claims are kind of serious, and they demand some evidence. Here's what we know. Again, ICE has detained some U.S. citizens in the past, usually temporarily. There have been mistakes made. When you have an operation that big, you can probably expect some mistakes. But they released them once citizenship was verified. That's not new. It's not unique to this administration. You can look back on a video that circulated heavily over the weekend from CNN back in 2016, just prior to Donald Trump being elected president in his first term. It was the Barack Obama administration. ICE was out carrying out very similar operations. Guess what? Under the same person, Tom Holman, who was working for Barack Obama at the time. CNN was there with them when they were looking for two Mexicans. They initially apprehended a Mexican leaving his home early one morning in a neighborhood. When they discovered they had apprehended the wrong person because he told them it was his brother they were looking for, he ratted out his brother. They detained the brother who was the correct person. CNN did not object at all. CNN reported on this just as, well, these things happen. Law enforcement's doing their job. The CNN reporter rode along with ICE that day, complimenting the job they're doing. There's nothing different back in 2016 except Barack Obama, a Democrat, was sitting in the Oval Office. There's no evidence of permanent checkpoints demanding papers from random citizens in Minneapolis or anywhere in Minnesota. Federal agents are operating in response to specific investigations. They're not doing blanket roundups. Now, again, doesn't mean mistakes may happen. It does mean that words like occupation and terrorizing carry a heavy burden of proof. So what you really are seeing here isn't just anger over ICE. It's two fundamentally different views of the role of the federal government. One side sees immigration enforcement, especially aggressive enforcement, as abusive. That would be Representative Omar and the Somalians. The other sees it as a basic function of sovereignty and law and keeping our border safe, keeping our country safe. That would be you and me. When Representative Omar says this isn't the America she escaped into, she's expressing a deeply personal perspective. But she's also redefining American norms in a way many voters simply just don't recognize. And that disconnect is a big deal. Minnesota didn't become a flashpoint overnight. For years, state and local officials, they've limited cooperation with federal immigration authorities, especially over these past 4 years with a Democrat Joe Biden presidency and a Democrat Tim Walz governor. This collision was probably inevitable when Donald Trump took office, or any Republican president took office and wanted to actually start enforcing immigration law. Because now you have federal agents who want to do their job. You have state leaders accusing them of intimidation. You have local officials warning of unrest, and members of Congress using the strongest possible language. That's a pretty volatile mix. That's a mix for what we saw happen to Renee Good a couple of weeks ago. Again, I've said this many times. You can oppose President Trump's immigration policies. You can criticize ICE. You can demand oversight and accountability. But comparing the United States to a failed state like Somalia, that, I think, crosses the line. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Joining me on the guest line today, Senator Thomas Alexander, who represents Senate District 1, covering Oconee County, parts of Pickens, but is also president of the South Carolina Senate and leads the upper chamber as lawmakers are tackling a full legislative agenda in 2026, with Republicans holding strong majorities and an election year on the horizon. Priorities range from tax policy, regulatory reform, to infrastructure, education, public safety. Senator Alexander is here to walk us through the Senate's plans, the challenges ahead, and what South Carolinians can expect as the session unfolds. Senator, it's always a pleasure. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Joey, and thank you for the opportunity. It's just hard to believe we're already into the legislative session and have a week behind us. It just time's moving on.
It is moving quickly, and with the 2026 session underway now, you guys are off to a fast start. What do you see as some of those top priorities that the Senate will be tackling this year?
Yeah, and we're like you say, at a fast pace. This is the second year of the legislative session, so we pick up right where we were from last year as far as things in the process. And this past week, our first week, we passed in the Senate the balanced budget amendment, calling for the constitutional convention to do something about the runaway debt at the federal level. Here in South Carolina, we have a balanced budget, and I think it's one of the greatest tools that we have, that we continue to balance our budget year in and year out, and we live within our means. And hopefully this will help encourage the feds to do something. So I say that just to say that that was something that was already teed up, ready to go from last year. Went to work on that. This week will be on DUI reform, something that had gone through the committee process, has gone through the subcommittee and was adopted by the full committee of the Judiciary Committee last Tuesday, and set it up. And we put that to the top of our agenda to take up this second week. But we've got several other priorities, as you mentioned. Regulatory reform, Joey, that's been referred to a subcommittee. The tax reform, I think, is great interest there. I look forward to seeing there and doing more for us to have a fair and competitive tax structure here in South Carolina. And then there's these THC drinks that have just come out of nowhere really over the last few years, that are going to simply have to be addressed. And then, of course, we have the budget. We'll be working with the governor on his priorities. He set his vision, and we'll be working on our vision and coming together in a team effort. The governor's great to work with, and look forward for us to having a very, very successful 2026 with my colleagues, working with the governor.
Wow, Senator, I'm tired thinking about it. All the things you've named.
Well, Joe, we got some. Unfortunately, we've got some things also, like the criminal game gang activity that we're
Yeah.
going to have to address that we've seen on the. So we're trying to get ahead. I guess you could say that obviously categories of supporting public safety and supporting student success and the government efficiency, the reform there, and just making sure that we're keeping South Carolinians first and delivering and making sure that we have the right type of policies in place, regardless of what it is, across the different categories of people's lives.
Sure. Let's dig in, and Senator Thomas Alexander is our guest today. He's president of the South Carolina Senate. Let's dig into some of those individual issues. You mentioned DUI legislation. Can you explain the changes that are being proposed and how you hope they impact highway safety across the Palmetto State?
Yeah, and you put your finger on it right there that, we are one of the worst states for DUI deaths in the country.
Wow.
Let that sink in.
Yeah.
South Carolina, DUI deaths. So this is going to be changing the existing laws where there's no teeth. Again, I think the way I envision it is giving law enforcement the tools when they stop to make these cases, to make a stronger case. And then also we are addressing where maybe someone has had multiple offenses, where they could plead it down or something of that nature. I mean, it is what it is. If it's, first offense, second offense, third offense, it needs to be from that standpoint. There's too many different ways that people can be safe today, whether it's with a designated driver or using some type of a platform for calling for a car service or something of that nature. We simply have got to eliminate the number of deaths. And so these laws have been on the books for quite a while, and it's just an update and giving law enforcement and the prosecutors. So I guess that's the two aspects of it, Joey, is giving the law enforcement and the prosecutors the tools and they need to be able to make solid, strong cases. With the intent here is just keeping people off the roads to prevent those deaths and serious injuries from that standpoint. And that's the reason I mentioned those other options that people have. And so we've got to reduce the number of deaths on South Carolina roads.
Yeah. Senator, you and I have just seen an explosion of growth in the upstate area where we live, but we see that all around the state. Needs for roads. We've been talking about roads for a decade or more now, water systems, those types of things to continue to keep our state capacity for that growth to keep up. Does the Senate have any plans or anything in particular that you guys are doing that would address maybe some of those long-term needs without overburdening the local government budgets? And talk with us too about roads. We're hearing about a potential, additional sales tax or something maybe in some areas to take care of roads.
Yeah, well, obviously the infrastructure is a high priority for us. And to your point, it's not just the roads, it's the other infrastructure, water and sewer and things of that nature. We have kind of left the growth aspect to home rule, where the people are closest to their elected officials and recognizing the various aspects. But I do think you'll see a lot of debate and trying to come up with some policies that are more of a statewide overview on some of that growth. And as far as the DOT, there's DOT reform. There'll be probably some legislation introduced. I know the House has had a committee working on that. I commend them for their efforts, the Speaker, in putting that together. I think you'll see some proposal in the Senate as well. And trying to, again, it gets back to some of the regulatory reform, trying to have the ability to shorten the licensing, the permitting process without doing away with the oversight. So it's more from a timing standpoint and several other things to get the projects out and completed in a more timely basis. There's, I believe, Joey, some $7 billion of, or at least I've heard that figure, out for work being done. In other words, it's been let to contract. It's in process around the state of South Carolina. But really, we're behind, and it's just extremely hard to get up to date on those, whether it's, the expansion is necessary. But I'm as concerned and want to make sure that we're taking care of the roads we already have and getting those up to condition. Those to me, are a priority as well. And it's important, too, that DOT do those in a way that they are promoting more safety. A lot of those are rural roads, of what we used to call farm-to-market roads, that really probably didn't have the design and engineering that they should have had. Yeah. But, they are working when they resurface to widen those roads and put some more reflectors and things of that nature and doing some other safety things. So, I mean, it's a process, but we've got to do it quicker, and we've got to get things moving from that standpoint. And because as the growth does not appear to be slowing down, the secret is out about South Carolina, and a lot of that I think is just the environment that we have of a business friendly state, but our people are friendly too. Yeah. We're very welcoming to people too. So you can't blame people wanting to come to South Carolina, but we've got to. We don't want to put an undue burden from that standpoint. We'll look forward to continuing to work with local governments as well as those state agencies from that standpoint.
Sure. Thomas Alexander is my guest. He's president of the South Carolina Senate. Senator, obviously we're in a election year, 2026. One of the issues that's already creating a lot of interest across the hall from you there in the House is an effort to close party primaries. There are two competing bills. The rhetoric's already getting kind of tense. There's going to be a hearing this week. Is there a companion bill in the Senate that would address closing primaries? And if the House gets this resolved on their side, do you believe the Senate will have the time to do so as well?
I believe there are some companion bills that are in Judiciary Committee. I'm not sure what the status of those are, but with the House taking those up here at the beginning of the session, I would envision that we would receive their bill that would help through the process. Yeah. And there can be time. I would hope that there would be time this year. But, as we're talking about how we're already halfway through the first month, I mean, the session will move on in a very rapid way, and as mentioned, the priorities and the things that we have. But I think if the House gets it to us in a relatively timely manner, we'll have time for it to work through the process. And to your point, it's important for it to go through the subcommittee and the committee process and do the due diligence from that standpoint.
Sure, yeah. One final question for you. You mentioned the THC drinks. Educate us on that. Where did that come from? Yeah,
this comes out, my understanding, at least after the federal law with the Farm Act numerous years ago, but really it's another example where there's just nothing there that precludes something from happening. And so you've got the THC drinks that have just grown in the establishments and without any regulation, without content, the power, the size, where they're sold. So it's really an unregulated industry right now. And so I think the question will be, does it continue at all? I think there will be a vote. Do you eliminate those drinks? I don't know where the body is on that. But I would envision, it would not surprise me that a vote on that would occur. If that fails, then we have to go into the process of regulating it. And the Agricultural Committee that has assigned a subcommittee, and Senator Michael Johnson is chairing that. They've had numerous subcommittees. I think they're going to have another subcommittee, and then I'm sure it'll be to the full Ag Committee, and then hopefully come out sometime, if they've finished their work, early February, for us to start debating and addressing that issue. Because, right now it does not speak to the age, Joey, of these being available, and any other type of regulation from that standpoint. So it is, in my opinion, it is a crisis that needs to be addressed for the betterment of our citizens, from our youngest to our oldest, and making sure that if they have one of those, that there's confidence in the content and the safety of the product and the size of the product. And we've heard some anecdotal horror stories of what has transpired as a result of no standards on these the contents of these drinks. So that is definitely going to be a priority for us this year.
Yeah. Senator, I appreciate your time today, appreciate what you do, and hey, we'll check back with you maybe in a month or so and just kind of see how the progress is going.
I'll look forward to it, Joey. Always a pleasure to be with you. Appreciate your service and all that you do, and just appreciate everything and the opportunity to join you today.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com.